We're gonna do a trip after. Everybody wants to know.
So this is an excellent idea. We just got to, what's your name? Irene just gave us the sort of the epilogue of this course.
Because we will do trips.
We're already envisioning a trip, right? Perhaps we see Jerba, or we need to talk about this. But
No,
I'm in.
Joking. Right. I wanted to say we're joking about going to Ethiopia. But they can't see me here. They'll show it. But we're planning. What, we are going to Ethiopia?
Unity University is going to India.
Really?
In February.
Okay, so let us know. So what I did want to say is that we are considering doing tiulim connected, that we did speak about doing evenings in tiulim. There are different museums in Israel. Like, give me an example, Shari.
Yamnite Museum.
Where is that, in Rosh Hashanah?
It's in there's an Iraqi museum. There's the Egyptian museum. We went to the Museum of Aden. We did it in our community.
So we're considering that maybe we will do that, not during the class, but maybe on a Thursday, we'll see.
Yeah.
And you'll tell them about Chag HaSiv.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So good morning, everyone. Let's maybe as an intro, right? So we're here, the course, some of you, I assume, perhaps have decided this is what you want to be doing throughout the year. Some of you perhaps are thinking about it. So today is a sort of introduction. And as part of the introduction, we will look through a few sources. Our course, I want to discuss today what we're going to be doing and why. And through why, the rationale, we're going to look at a few sources. I'd like to, of course, get to know you and know who we are and where we're coming from, most importantly. But essentially what we're here to do is it's a course that we want to understand the Jewish calendar. We want to understand different days that we celebrate, commemorate, but outside of Europe. There is this sort of, understanding that most of our education, our bookshelf, is very Eurocentric, and we'll get into that in a moment and sort of why we're here to do what we do. But there is this kind of supposed tension between, on the one hand, whoever's here wants to understand more about the Jewish calendar, but the truth is the Jewish calendar is a wonderful platform through which we can learn about Moroccan Jewry, Yemenite Jewry, Iraqi Jewry, and so on and so forth. And in a moment, we'll get into the whys. But first, I'd like to know just a name and where we were born and where our parents were born. Okay.
Irene Kaufman from New York, Long Island. My parents were from Vienna and Hungary.
Czechoslovakia. Okay, nice to meet you.
What? So you can tell us who you were born.
I was born in Brisbane, opposite the Gabba. It's an Australian football field. There was just about a minyan when my parents moved to Brisbane. And then from one side, it's East Galicia, Lvov, Brozdovic, and then the other side is Nikolaev. And Nikolaev, and I think 3 generations in Australia. So my grandmother was born in Australia. I think her mum was born in Australia. But yeah, so yes.
My father was born in what was then Belarus one day, Poland another day. He came to South Africa with my grandparents in the 30s, so they missed out on what happened in Europe. And my mother was a 2nd generation South African. On the grandfather's side, my grandfather was either him or his father was a first cousin to the Raksavajek. And my grandmother was already born in South Africa.
It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, Shelly Sharma was born in Newark, New Jersey. both my parents were born in, mother is Newark, father in Atlantic City. But their parents were born in, one is like Russia and Austria-Hungary, on my mother's side. And from my father's side, both parents were born in America, but half the family was born in Russia. Because they turned the century.
I lived in Nashville. I originally born in Newark, New Jersey, also, as we just discovered. Grew up in Chicago. My parents were from New York, but on my father's side, I'm part Hungarian, part Galiciana, and my mother's side, and since I'm very not politically correct to say they're Palestinian, but the mother was very born in the old Yeshuvan spots.
As your cats, I was, raised in New York. My parents were from Hungary, my father was generations in there. My mother's family originally was from, I guess, Poland. But her father was already Hungarian.
I'm from Morris, born in London. My mother's from Manchester, and my father was a big fat. My name is Natania Ubelowitz. I was born in Slovak. That's why my name is Natania. I was born in South Africa. My parents were both South African, and my grandparents were Lithuanian.
Like most, right? I think it's beyond 90% of South African juries, right? Except for you, is Lithuanian, right? A half. You do have the half. That's right.
Name is Dina.
Yes.
I was born in New Jersey and made Aliyah from Vienna, where I spent most of my life. And my father's from Palestine. He was born here in 23. And he immigrated to Palestine in 1948.
I'll recap in a moment. Soon.
Then he went to American. My mother, who was American, and her people are from Polish origin. And my father's people are from Polish origin.
Nice to meet you. Yes.
My name is Deborah Chavez. I was born in New York City, made out of 30 years ago. Each of my parents came to the US after the Shoah. My dad's family is from Vienna, from Austria, many generations, fought in World War I in Austria, and so on and so forth. My mother is ethnically Hungarian and Caucasian. She was born in 3 different countries.
Wow.
3 different situations. He was asked to talk about
Very nice.
hundreds of years in married.
My name is Moshe Belkin. Grew up in Detroit, Michigan. My mother was born in Leipzig, Germany. And my father was born in San Bernardino, California, but raised in Cleveland. And a Jewish orphanage.
And I'm Deborah Belkin. I'm a Jew by choice. So I was born in Michigan. In Flint, little town. And I actually did 23andMe, and I used to joke that my family came over on the Mayflower. Well, 23andMe told me that most likely some of my descendants were on the Mayflower. So.
My family, I'm also third generation Canadian born. My grandfather's parents came actually via South Africa. Yeah, somehow ended up in Ottawa.
the first city was established in Ottawa because of his mother or whatever who was brought over from the old countries that I can't live here. So, they're third generation Canadian. On my father's side, my mother was born in England to British mother and a Hungarian / Irish father. We grew up in the Herzog household and was very Zionistic in Ireland, and they made Aliyah, my mother was a baby, 1950. Yes. My parents, 51 years of marriage living in Canada, to make Aliyah son.
Wow.
I have a brother I received, Chicago, Cleveland, Israel, and a bunch of places in between, and granddaughter of 4 Holocaust survivors. 100% Czech or Hungarian, and married to 100% Emma. I'm Rebecca Silverstein. I was born in Connecticut. My mother was 6 years old when she left on the last ship out of Poland just before the Nazis took over and went to Canada and grew up in Winnipeg. And my father was born and bred in New York. I was born in Brooklyn, grew up in Williamsburg, and I've been here for about 30 years. Dolly Weiss. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. There's a lot. Yeah, there's something. Yes, my parents were born in America, grandparents all Hungarian. My name is Jonnie Schnytzer, I'm Johnny's mom. Yeah, that's why she got the kiss. Pretty special. I don't so then I would have the honor to be able to see myself. I was actually born in London, so I'm a Pom. And then my mother's family, my mom's already second, third generation Australian forgotten. Her family was from Russia. Her dad was the head of the family, 7 brothers and sisters who got them all out of Russia, so they survived well before the war. There's some remaining there as well, which is why I like to steal things off the street. And my dad's from Nikolaev in Russia. And we met Aliyah because we wanted kids. We hadn't always been really kids. As Johnny said, well, we moved to Brisbane, it was barely a beginning. And we just decided it was just more natural to live in Israel. You know, dancing Kilane, my NTRs for dancing, but it's for Jews, a good place to be. My name is Martine Lesman. I'm originally from France, but I was born in Algeria. And 6th, 7th generation before me, we came from Italy.
Where in Algeria?
In Algeria.
Where?
Constantine.
Once that, oh wow.
Tlemcen, for one moment. And
okay, I'm Jan Sinai, I'm still in Manchester. And my grandparents, both sides from Poland. My parents were both in England. My father in Manchester and my mom in London.
I'm Rebecca. I was born in New York, in the Bronx. And my mother came from Chester, Poland. My father came from Kipton, Russia. They both met in America. And I think now both places are in the Ukraine now. My mother didn't want to be born in the Ukraine, but she died, and after she died, she became the Ukrainian.
You could.
I'm Carol Glover. I was born in Peoria, Illinois. And I would say that my parents were both all born in the United States. My grandparents came from Russia, what would be today Poland and Ukraine. And we made Aliyah 8 years ago from Portland, Oregon. And it's in Israel that I feel complete as a Jew. And I'm wondering if you have any more hands.
Yes. There you go. Yeah.
Get enough school to go back when you leave for.
Yes, yes, that's it's always horrible when that happens. Yes. Yes, it is from everywhere. So we'll get to that in a moment. Let's continue with those on Zoom. Where you're from, where you were born, and where your parents were born. So Amanda, we'll start with you. Okay. Can't hear you, Amanda. Okay, can you try again, Amanda? I can't hear you. One moment. Let's try someone else. Judith. Judith, are you there? Or what else do we have here? Deborah, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. So
Hi.
Hi. Yes. So where were you born? Where were your parents born?
Okay, Amanda says she hasn't got a working microphone, so she sends her apologies. She just told me. I am originally from a place called Welwyn Garden City, outside of London in the UK. And my parents were both born in the UK. My father was born in Wales, and his family came from Poland, quite a way back. They were involved with a business. They were involved with the Marquis of Bute, and he was brought over. My grandfather was brought over as a 15-year-old to work in the family business, but because they were working on Shabbat, they ran away and became peddlers and self-made. He worked, and my mother's family came to England from Russia / Poland / Ukraine, those sort of areas, and they came over pre-war as well. So pretty much pretty standard.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Helen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I was born in Italy, and then my parents decided to go to Australia. And then we moved to England. My parents were in the Holocaust, in the camps, and I was born after the war. Then we went, after England, we came to America, and then I came to Israel as a young woman, I think I was 20 at the time. My parents are from Poland originally. So, since I came to Israel, I haven't left Israel at all. So I'm here a long, long time, 50 years.
Wow. Nice to meet you. It's good you're here. Eileen, am I reading that right?
Yes, Eileen. I was born in Bethesda, Maryland. My father was in the service. I was born at the Naval Hospital. And I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. When I got married, I lived in New York my whole adult life till I made Aliyah about 10 years ago. On one side, my grandparents were born in America. On the other side, one was born in Vienna and one was born in Latvia. The ones who were born here, their parents also came from Vienna.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Who else do we have on Zoom? Because some of you have names like Ona or SS or iPhone, and so feel free to jump in and let us know where you were born and your parents. Anyone else? Okay. And we had, yes, and you entered it. So wait, where were you born? Name where you were born and your parents.
Parents grandparents from Scotland, from Eastern Europe, but through some generation, some sides I'm fourth generation.
That's-
There's a fair percentage that there was the Romania's pre-war.
Pre-war. Wow. And did you go? No, yes.
Holland, Holland, and grandparents, Czechoslovakia. You're Ashkenazi.
You're Ashkenazi, interesting. So yeah, that was so first of all, apart from that it's very interesting to hear where we all come from and where we were born. There's this supposed elephant in the room because everyone here, apart from Martin, who was connected to Algeria, we're all some form or matter European. Even those who liberated Palestine, the assumption, right, or the mikvahs, right, we all, or the Mayflowers, perhaps apart from the Mayflowers, we're all somehow connected to Europe. And then that sort of begs the question, what we're doing in a course where we're not really here to study the Jewish calendar. The Jewish calendar is an excuse. We're here to study about Jews in other parts of the world. And why are we doing that? It reminds me of a story. I have a good friend who did smicha. He was from a Tunisian family, from Tunis, from the capital. And he gets his smicha and he goes back to be a rabbi in Israel of a local Tunisian community. And he gives his first Rasha on Shabbos. And, he's quoting Rashi and the Rasha Hirsch. And I think something from the previous Rebbe in Chabad. And then he tells me, and then someone comes up to him after the drush and says, it was beautiful, very, passionate, but where's the Mamalushin? Where are the Tunisian rabbis? Khalifa Cohen, Rabbi Khalfa Cohen, what's going on? He says, that's what they taught me at the rabbinate, so this is what I'm doing. So we know what we're here to do. We know that we have a Jewish calendar, which consists of holidays, high holidays, festivals, and traditions, minhagim, that we all know. And those that we know, we're going to gain a new viewpoint of them. So we're going to learn about prominent figures. We're going to learn texts, any which text. It can be anything from a travelogue to a shut, right, a sort of halachic responsa, to various texts from places that we're not usually acquainted with to gain a different perspective on the Jewish calendar that we already know. But we're also going to gain insights into holidays or commemorative dates that we don't know of. We'll end this class with one that is in a few days, connected to Algerian Jewry. But so why do this? There's something beyond the intellectual rigor or the want to sort of understand a bit more of where we come from as the sort of tribes or as Jews. I think first and foremost, one of the goals of this course or the sort of motives is we all talk about achdut, we all talk about unity, and a very simple question is, how does one achieve unity? And if you say you believe you want unity, how do you do this? And there's a fundamental assumption at the base of this course that one modest starting point for unity begins with source sheets. If I'm here and I believe in unity amongst all Jews, then it's very difficult to achieve that if I don't really have a deep understanding of where the other one comes from, mindsets. If we all came here from different geographies and places, and here we're a bit more limited, but if you have Israel as a state or Jewish diaspora, you have Jews coming from all over the world, then if I have Moroccan Jewry, Iraqi Jewry, Ethiopian Jewry, the list is endless. And of those tribes that got where they got, exiled and came here, and now we're all here together, and we know nothing of, in a deep sense, then what kind of unity are we talking about? It's very superficial. And Matan might not like to hear this, but I'm willing to bet that if I look at this bookshelf, there's probably not even 5% Tunisian. And it's just going, Moroccan. I'll go with Moroccan because Moroccan, the proportion of grand rabbis, prominent, important texts, just from Morocco, just as an example. And what we have here is completely disproportionate. And this is important because it's not only about unity to say, okay, so by the end of this course, I know more. through using the excuse of the Jewish calendar, but I know more in-depth figures, texts, ideas, insights. It's not only so that I know more, so I then understand where the other's coming from, but there's this underlying question. There's an underlying question that I think today a lot of us are asking, and that is, what do we want Israel to be when she grows up? Where, 70 years plus, where we're still kind of, and there's a lot of talk about how this is very natural. You're reaching your first century. This is to be expected, this kind of angst and tension, because you have all these different groups with different agendas and ideologies and wants and needs. But let's not forget that we're all Jews, that we're exiled. We came back here. That's a pretty powerful common denominator. That's something great to start with and to work with. And the assumption is, if I just know a little bit more before I talk about left, right, before I talk about religious, not religious, but simply trying to understand a little bit more about what it means to be Jewish through the question of where we came from and what we brought in our luggage. And what we can, when we peek in there, what we see, we're going to be at times shocked, because it's not only about one why is for the sake of unity. That's very nice, but then how does that affect me on a day-to-day basis? Another reason is a different perspective. At times, a radically different perspective, which will then influence how what our Shabbos table looks like, the way we teach, the way we ask all sorts of questions. In fact, for this example, I want to already bring the first example, because I said I want to bring 3 examples in our first class to get a sort of taste of the kind of text we're going to be looking at. I want to take us, so when we talk about gaining a different perspective, a radically different perspective of how Jews think in different geographies, I want to take us back a few years to those that horrid beginning of COVID, and to the first Pesach. The first Pesach of COVID. There are a lot of questions that arise. You need to be at home. You're at home by yourself. What happens if you are completely by yourself? It doesn't matter if you're 40 and not married, and perhaps very depressed that you're not sure what's going to happen with you over the Chag, or if you're 90 and you seek, if we open the door, some assistance or help. And usually the sort of psak of, from certain geographies is, look, halacha is halacha, Pesach is Pesach, there's nothing to talk about. And then we have Moroccan Jewry. And I'm bringing here today specifically, we're in North Africa, and I'll touch upon how this class will work. But our first example is from Morocco. It was a pamphlet that ran across the internet towards the first Passover with COVID, penned by the Association of the Moroccan Rabbis of the Holy Land. Okay, so this is an insight into how Moroccan halachas thinks and approaches a challenge of, we're going to be alone on Leila Seder, but we have this technology called Zoom, way before any of us are using this, and they're thinking, well, wait a second, we need to say something about this. So it was titled Clarification of Opinion and Halachic Ruling Concerning the Use of Zoom on the Night of the Seder. This was, of course, in Hebrew. I translated it from towards, I think it was literally, I think it was about a week before Pesach. Behold, in recent days, a halachic question was presented to us regarding the permissibility of using Zoom on the night of the Seder. Here, a few days ago, the truth is, we did not initially intend to express our opinion on this matter. And even now, we do not intend at all to deal with the reasons for the aforementioned ruling and the arguments that allowed it, because it is clear to every rabbi that all of these matters depend on knowledge of the reality and many other details, and God forbid from deciding casually in matters on which Torah prohibitions and rabbinic prohibitions depend. We came only to fence off and clearly prohibit the aforementioned loophole, if not in case where there is a pikuach nefesh. So interestingly, the first passage seems like this is a no-no. Like, look, this is something that you can't deal with, and you know how, right? Why do you have an abstract or a kind of, the sort of the summary of some report? Because no one goes on. Very few of us go on to read the actual report itself. we read the kind of abstract. So these rabbis are smart. They say, if you're not going to continue reading, so just know that there are issues here, there's a problem. Okay, but then we're told here, unfortunately, at this time of trouble for Yaakov, it is clear to everyone that the obligation to obey the instructions of the Ministry of Health is generally a matter of life and death. From this rule derives the obligation to conduct the Seder separately, and it is the duty of each family to conduct the Seder in a limited circle according to the instructions of the Ministry of Health. So first of all, we have here, right, a rabbinic body that is very much with 2 feet on the ground and saying, don't look at me. First and foremost, you're looking at Misrad HaBriyut. And if the Ministry of Health says you need to take care of yourselves, that comes before anything. First and foremost, in kol hakavod to a Rav, the Ministry of Health. Now, this is not obvious, but this is what the specifically Moroccan mindset says. You need to listen to what Misrad HaBriyut says. Let's continue. And regarding the elderly and those who are alone confined to their homes, without a doubt, if they receive permission from a doctor on the grounds of personal safety or doubt of danger, they will be permitted to use Zoom. I want to repeat, we have here a rabbi that says the psak for who gets to use Zoom on Passover is not me, it's your local doctor. That's huge. That's democratization of halacha and saying the doctor is an important part of this process because the doctor alone will decide, are you depressed? Are there other dangers perhaps? Anything and everything, I'm letting the doctor decide. This is a kula. This is where you say, I'm not going to be, it's not time to be stringent, but I'm more lenient and I see the person before anything else. However, as long as there is no express permission from a doctor for any specific matter to permit it, then this is generally a prohibition and should not be permitted in any way. And it is our duty to emphasize that permission to desecrate Shabbos and a holy day in the case of saving life is permitted by the Torah and is not given at all by custom or by any sages from a particular sect. And so on in everything that does not involve danger to life or doubt of danger to life. This is forbidden according to all scholars and is not related to sect or custom. This is another fascinating passage, and this is very idiosyncratic of the sort of Moroccan rabbinic mind, and that is my psak is good for anyone. My psak, meaning you have here a letter written by the Association of Moroccan Rabbis, but there is a paragraph that says here, make no mistake, what I'm saying here is kosher for anyone, because the matter that we're talking about here relates to anyone. And here I just want to say, and this is something that must be said. If this course was to take place 150 years ago in Meknes, in Rabat, doesn't matter, anywhere you want in Morocco, and I was to ask people, you know, sort of, what do you know about Judaism? Then you discover something very interesting. They know the Moroccan Rabbanim, but they've also, quite a few of them have heard of the Baal Shem Tov. How have they heard of the Baal Shem Tov? Because the Baal Shem Tov has been translated into Judo-Arabic and people are reading Baal Shem Tov stories. One of the interesting characteristics, specifically in North Africa, that I'm not only very proud of my heritage, and I'm going to paskin for anyone, but I'm also very much curious and interested in what's going on with my brethren in Europe, what's happening in Ashkenaz, what are they paskining, what are they teaching, and let's embed it in what we're doing. But if we were to go 150 years ago to Leipzig, not sure this, or Galicia, not sure this, it's far rarer to find an instance where you have your Ashkenazi Rav or your Galiciana Rav and is saying, yeah, you know, and in the same speech, he's quoting the Belzer Rav and Rabbi Khalifa Cohen. But in Germany, they were doing that. So this passage, this awareness that I'm not only talking to my community, but make no mistake, I'm talking to Jews as Jews is not obvious at all. Okay, and this is part of and this is what I mean when I say that learning about Jews coming from different places is a great way to gain a different mindset into what it means to be Jewish, and perhaps question whether what we were always told is not, it's a mosaic, it's a piece of the mosaic, and there are other important pieces that when we add them together, then I can ask serious questions like, what do I want Israel to be when she grows up? And how do I want my shul, what do I want my shul to, what do I want my shul's annual education program to look like? Who am I bringing to my shul to speak? What does my local library look like? And even though we've all heard of the Abu Chatzera family, how many of us have a single book penned by an Abu Chatzera? Now, Birdugo, maybe we know. Khalifa Cohen, I'm not sure. Maybe one. Yes, of course.
In the late 19th century, when the Jews from Algeria were granted nationality of French nationality, the consistoire of France said that they were going to send Rabbanim from Strasbourg in France to educate the great rabbis that were in Algeria. Because my great-grandparents were great rabbis, and they were educated by the great rabbis of Strasbourg, Alsace. Yeah.
But not only, so perhaps you also know that Algerian Jews were smart enough to know that when they needed a really good rabbi, they would also go to Morocco to bring their rabbis, like the Rav Yosef Massas, who came to Tlemcen to be a rabbi because they said, you want a big rabbi? They're not all in Paris. Some of them are in Meknes or Tlemcen, and we need them. But fascinating. So it's about gaining a different mindset. And this psak, this, at the time, the mindset is chumrah, is it's Passover, it's Leil Seder, we can't press the Zoom button. And what I want to say here is that the more we will learn about Moroccan Jewry, and this is just as a case study specifically, because this is from Morocco, we'll understand that this pamphlet isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a long tradition of rabbis, who in this case, specifically in Morocco, but also in Algeria, understand that the role of the rabbi is not to make the easy decision, but it's to make the tough, courageous decision where I'm willing to go out on a whim and say, you know what, this is going to be okay because this is what the people need. And that it's going to be okay. It reminds me, so next week, and I'm sort of skipping for a moment, the year in general, it would have been very tempting to go according to geographies, but that would be very Aristotelian. It would be going through categories, and life doesn't work that way. We have a Jewish calendar, so we are going to try, when we have, we're going to start with Shabbos, because of course we have that every week. So next week we'll start with Shabbos, and then we'll move on to Rosh Chodesh. But then every week when we have a yurtzeit of a certain prominent figure that we don't know of, Rabbi Shalom Sharabi, it'll be an opportunity to learn more about Yemenite Jewry or certain aspects. So we'll be coming and going from different geographies, from Babylon to North Africa to Ethiopia. And it won't be confusing because what is going to be leading us is the Jewish calendar. And that is the number one logic. When there'll be days or times that we don't have a certain a date, there will be certain weeks, for example, one week in particular where there was a certain rabbi whose child in the early 20th century was saved from a horrible car accident, and he wrote a piyut, sort of, thankful song to God, saving his son. And he happened to also write a great commentary on the Torah. So there'll be a week where we'll study Rabbi Ovadia Chaim Yeshua's commentary on that week's Torah portion and learn his piyut. And we'll ask ourselves, is there something to be said about where he was born and why he writes his commentary the way he does, and why he comes to write a thank song to Hashem after what happened, and why perhaps others do or don't, and what we can learn from this. But going back to this pamphlet, we'll see next week, because we will start with Shabbos, we will be learning, it'll be an opportunity to learn about Rabbi Yosef Massas, and his approach to Shabbos. So halachic responses to what happens when a Jew says, Shul is very far from where I live. There's the train in Meknas. Can I take it? And you'll be surprised at the rabbi's response. And what I'm trying to say is that this kind of mindset of looking of where I can do not the easy thing, but the more difficult, it's far more difficult to give a kula. There is a long tradition of this in certain areas. And there are things we can learn from this. So it's all beyond unity as a why this course is important. It's an opportunity to gain a different mindset that we don't always have to say, oh, because this is what Jews do. No, the truth is this is what Jews do is what usually we have been taught about what Jews do in a certain geography, but Jews also do many, many other things. And that means opportunity for us to perhaps behave in different ways, to engage in different kinds of discussions, not only towards what we want Israel to be, but the way we want our communities to be, our shuls to be, and so on and so forth. But there's another reason. It's not only about a different mindset and unity. There's also clearly intellectual interest, but there's also the human question. The Jew has gone through a lot in 2,000 years. And again, I return to that we know a lot about a very specific Jew. And it's fascinating when you learn about the human condition, the Jew stripped of everything else, but in a specific geography, and what we might be able to learn about that. Our second source, and this is another example of what we'll be doing in this course, we'll be dealing at times with very unexpected sources that you wouldn't expect to teach us something about, in this second case, Tunisian Jewry. But travelogues are a great source of knowledge. You always have in every century Jews that, don't have the patience, or they had ADHD, couldn't sit down. And so they would travel, and they either wanted to find the 10 lost tribes, or they just were interested in the world or in Jews. And they published books, pamphlets about Jews around the world. Our second source, as an example of what we can do in this course, is from none other than 19th century New York sheriff, Mordechai Manuel Noach, one of my favorites for many reasons, because he was one of the first Zionists. So he becomes, in 1815, he becomes the United States of America's ambassador to Tunisia. He was only there for half a year, but while he was there, he goes on tour, to visit the world and Jews in North Africa and Europe, and he publishes a travelogue. It's like hundreds of pages of what he saw. 75% of Mordechai Manuel Noach's travelogue is irrelevant to Jews. But as a proud Jew, a quarter Sephardi, but it was the quarter that was most important to him, he paints pictures. He goes to very specific settings to understand who is the Jew who is not from New York, who is not from Savannah, in his case, or London. And I want us to look at, to my mind, we wouldn't find this unless you really looked into Mordechai Manuel Noach and to learn something where we have this perfect meeting point between the universal and the particular. So let's begin. The cemetery is one place where Jewish women in Tunis, which is the capital of Tunisia, meet and see one another. Right? This is 1816. Since it is not their custom to visit one another in their homes. The truth is, in Hebrew, it's not their custom. In Hebrew, they're not permitted, meaning women wouldn't go out. So the one time they could was on Friday, so they went to the cemetery. The cemetery lies outside the wall without any fence surrounding it, and a path to it is open for animals of all kinds to come and go freely. Every Friday afternoon, Jewish women come to the cemetery field carrying small jars containing a moist substance to clean and whiten the graves of their relatives. To this resting place of the dead, I would sometimes come to observe the nature of these people's spirits. The wife or the mother, upon arriving at the cemetery, would place her utensils on the ground and, guided by the inscription, search for the grave of the man dear to her heart. Upon finding what she sought, she would touch the inscription with her hand and kiss it. Then she would sit upon the grave, weep bitterly, speak to the deceased, pour out her troubles before him, and recount to him the details of her life. In her tender simplicity, she would beseech his intercession and his compassionate protection. Then she would rise to wash and clean the grave, And when she had finished her task, she would join the other women to converse with them and learn from them of the world's changes and occurrences. Scenes such as these, revealing a heart that feels and loves, and a deep piety and reverence, I have often had the occasion to witness. The furnace of affliction has taught the Jew. Now Mordechai is making his observation of Jews in general, and something to be taught about our Jewish calendar, and not only festivals, but weekly occurrences. The furnace of affliction has taught the Jew, in weeping for his own brokenness, to weep also for the brokenness of others. In this place, I grew accustomed to seeing the daughters of Israel, not in Zion or the Sharon, not with faces shining with the glory of triumph, freedom, and love, like perhaps he saw in America, but bearing within themselves a heart whose worth surpasses all virtues, and which cannot be valued in all the world's wealth and finest oil. This is this beautiful depiction of a minhag, which is so specific that I don't even know that it occurs anywhere else in North Africa, meaning he's talking specifically about women in the capital in Tunisia that have this minhag, that every Friday they go to the cemetery and do what they do. And so one reason I brought this example is because this isn't a Chag, this isn't even talking about Shabbos, but it's talking about something that happened on a regular basis. And the question that begs itself is, can I be inspired by this in any way? Do I come to ask myself, what are the sort of do I have that sort of weekly hour of chesed, and what is it that I do? What can I learn from other cultures? What goes on today? What are the things we do? Are there different communities where part of the regular occurrences are sources of inspiration, even if they no longer exist today? You know, a woman asked in the previous class, do Tunisian women still do this? And then someone else had responded, no, clearly not, because you understand from this, the reason they went there is because they weren't allowed to go out of the house. And then the question that begs itself is, wait a second, how did this start? Was there this tzedekis woman that went because she was a Baalat Chasadim, started all of this, the trendsetter, and everyone came along? Or was it because, you know, two women just wanted to speak and they come and say, look, I'm going to the cemetery to clean your mom's grave, and then we're going to... And the questions arise and arise and arise, but it doesn't change the fact that we all came to this country with different suitcases and luggage. And if we don't learn about the mini pogroms, or as Noach says, Noach, you know, this second final paragraph, he says, whether you like it or not, the Jewish calendar, half of it is brokenness. There's either the event that happened to us and almost broke us, or the miracles that saved us. That's the Jewish calendar, plus the, you know, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, like whatever God told us, and then what history taught us about ourselves. That's it. That's what a Jew has. But then Noach says, you know, you're taught about the Holocaust, you're taught about different events that happen in Jewish history, but again, they're very much your events. For Noach, a quarter Sephardi, but growing up in America, why is this so important? In a separate course I taught that Mordechai Manuel Noach remains one of the most important voices for Jewish and democratic, for the future of the Jewish state. He was a pioneering Zionist with ideas that are unparalleled in Jewish or Zionist history. Why is this important? Because Mordechai Manuel Noach's Zionist question does not begin before he visits his brethren all over the world. It is only through the Jews escaping his own four amot, his or her little corner where we grew up, and understanding that it's not obvious that in America I have these conditions, and understanding then Jews here and Jews there. Mordechai Manuel Noach wrote, for example, what is probably the first Jewish constitution. He wrote a constitution for a state that he envisioned to be a temporary state for Jews to come in the state of New York. No one listened, Jews didn't come, separate story. You know, Messiah's the Zionist nobody wants. But this constitution is all with a great awareness of the tribes, of viewing Jews as a multicultural project, of viewing the flip side of the pogroms of the exiled Jew, but of the opportunity in Jews that have been spread all over and what needs to happen and can happen, and one can learn from one another when we come together. So Noach, if you like, is an example of what happens to a Jew once you've learned about other Jews and what that might change. And the ramifications can be, wonderful. And we'll also be doing this sometimes. We'll be just bringing texts to learn about where the universal, the Jew from another place, another time, what they were doing. And at times it'll be a nice anecdote, but at times it'll make us question, how do we lead our own lives? Another point, and with this we'll perhaps conclude, another aspect of this course, as I mentioned earlier, beyond the Chagim or the Moadim that we know of and we celebrate, is it's a great opportunity to learn about commemorative moments or celebrations that we don't know about. What Jews of Algeria, for example, were commemorating. And an example that I wanted to provide is one that happens mamash in a few days. So in a few days, so tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh, tomorrow and Thursday, Daled Mar Cheshvan, or the 23rd of October, I want to take you back to 1541. In 1541, on the 23rd of October, King Carl of Portugal wants to take over Algeria. And the Portuguese have one of the biggest fleets in the world at the time, a monstrous navy, monstrous, highly professional. And there's no chance he's not going to succeed. And we're talking, I think, 20,000 soldiers, a huge fleet, hundreds of ships, at least 100. And then something very interesting happens on the 23rd. You have a little local army, the Ottomans, but then there's this crazy earthquake and this wild storm, and tons of ships start sinking, and the morale grows amongst the sort of local Maccabees, and they back off and head back to Portugal. And the Jews can't believe this. They're like, this is Hashem. Hashem saved us, no doubt. This is amazing. And every year, you still have, from 1541 to this day, descendants of Algerian families. It's called Purim Adom, Red Purim, who commemorate the miracle of Hashem saving the local Algerian community from, everyone heard what happened with these Jews, by the way, have heard of the Spanish Inquisition. They've heard of what the Portuguese want to do and want to be the sort of Inquisition 2.0. They are petrified, and then they're saved. So I want us to read this so that, we can then walk out and say, we know, perhaps more than even some Algerians, that in 2 days or in a few days, there is Purim Adom. Some of us might decide that on the 23rd of October or the 4th of Mar Cheshvan, we want to share this piyut, originally in Hebrew, which has been translated as a kind of peek into not a pogrom or a miracle that saved certain Jews, but a date to be commemorated until this very day, and we should know about it. So this is from, by the way, this would always be, the day would begin usually with a Ta'anit. I usually fast for the day. They're all, or Ta'anit Dibur, you either wouldn't speak or wouldn't eat. And then you'd celebrate it by saying all sorts of songs or piyutim. No, Jews. No, Jew. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes, because our government a couple of days ago, right, there was this they wanted to change the name of the war, and there's this whole talk, we're not going to get into that, but there's this whole talk that it's a battle of narratives, like, do I call it the War of 7th of October, the Milchemet HaTkuma? But taking on your point, here we have a narrative where, the Jews, everyone else is like, oh, okay, great, we were saved. We're going to read this piyut. We're going to see there is a very clear narrative of what's going on here and how this fuels Jewish belief. So this is just one of the few piyutim that were read. And I've got here the Hebrew for anyone who wants. Worker of wonders, maker of terrors, who is like you, mighty God, Lord of hosts and bearers? Ruler of nations, who would not fear? In the heaven and earth, none act as near. Yours, O Lord, is the kingdom's height, and glory to you is meet and right. We have heard your fame with the ears keen ring. We have seen your deeds doubled in everything. As in the days of Egypt's plight, you wrought wonders beyond all sight. You struck down a mighty band. You covered the face of the land. All kinds of warriors bold were shattered with power untold. They were reckoned as potsherd heaps, as stones from slings that battle keeps. Mixing and rising, goats like leopards leapt. By the way, in the Hebrew, there are words that bring us back to Shirat Hayam, to Pirkei Avot. It's very it really is wonderful to read it in the original. Mixing and rising, goats like leopards leapt. They marched and shouted as lions adept, swift as eagles in their flights, running as armies in battled nights. You chased them in your strong, fierce chase. You weakened their hands. You broke their pace. You thundered your name. Their courage fell. You made their loins to stumble as well. Their eyes grew dim. Their sight turned night. Their vision failed before your might. Who is a rock like our God near at hand? He is our Savior, our fortress stand. He answers whenever our voices call. He heeds the cry of our children small, and the women assembled one and all. So this is one piyut out of several. When I read this in the previous group, someone had there commented that the Hebrew is absolutely gorgeous, and someone had asked, so in what languages were they writing? And this raises an interesting question about the relationship between leaders of a community or a sort of intellectual elite and the rest of the folk. And the picture, it's the same sort of picture anywhere you go. A Jew in Poland in 18th century knew to speak Yiddish, but knew very little Hebrew at all, perhaps a few prayers off heart. And the same goes here. An intellectual elite is always going to be an intellectual elite with an unparalleled Hebrew or, Aramaic or whatnot. But here we have to conclude, we know that on Dalet Cheshvan, the Algerian community commemorates Purim Adom. And as you see here, in terms of the anonymous author, it's clear that, this is reminiscent of what happened in Egypt. There's even an insinuation that the 10 plagues, right, in a historic setting, one doesn't need to look at a thunderstorm as a thunderstorm, but question whether Hashem is perhaps talking to me. And this goes back to our question of mindset. When certain things happen, think of from 7th of October to the war with Iran. How do we take this? What do Jews have in their suitcases from different geographies? How do you come to interpret this whole balagan in the past couple of years? What is the relationship between history, humanity, Jews, the divine, what's going on? Much of this is, we're going to gain hopefully fascinating insights throughout this course. So that's our sort of intro of what we're going to be doing, why we're going to be doing it, the sort of sources we're going to be touching upon. If anyone has specific either connections or wants for certain text rabbis, feel free to let me know. Another important thing tied into this course or connected or inspired from a similar source, Matan has on the 6th of November, Thursday night, we have a Sigd night, a night celebrating the Ethiopian Jewish community's holiday of Sigd. If many of us don't know what this is, it's a wonderful excuse to come to this evening where we will be hearing, if none of you have ever heard, a kes. Right, a kes is like a rabbi with a better sense of humor. It's just the truth, And yes, but even the older ones. The truth is, it's so there's going to be a night with Rabbi Dr. Sharon Shalom with Kes Ephraim Lawi, a wonderful initiative. Do you want to perhaps? Yes. So this is, but it's, you really had thought about this idea, and it's a wonderful, and so Jorah, so Thursday night on the 6th of November, and hopefully we'll have more of these throughout the year. which will be a chance not only to sort of, gain flavors and tastes and, a bit more of an in-depth feeling of beyond where we come from. So thank you very much. Shavua tov, Dorot tovot, Chodesh tov. So my mom would say I'm an Ashkefadi. So I teach at Bar Ilan. No, Jewish philosophy. My forte is medieval Kabbalah, like 13th century Spain. Yeah, I love Hanoch. Hanoch is a huge mentor, teacher. How do you know Hanoch?
I retired from Bar.
Oh, wow.
I was in the fundraising. Of course, it's funny. Lots of these.